So first off, Heather, let me say Happy New Year. We were not around last week, and so we're still catching up a little bit. But this week we are right back at it. Of course, the government is shut down, basically where we left it at the end of 2018. By now, let's see, we are just a day or two away from when government workers would otherwise be getting their checks, and they will not be getting those checks as of this time. And this is because Donald Trump wants $5.6 billion to build a wall or some type of edifice that is made out of steel as opposed to concrete, because apparently Democrats don't like concrete, even though concrete's cheaper, but steel is better, and it's going to be slatted and it's going to be beautiful. But nobody wants this for a myriad of reasons. And this week we saw Donald Trump address the country and really say nothing, and then watch Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer follow him, not saying too much more, frankly. But give me your sense of this fight.
Well, Happy New Year to you, too, first. And,
Thank you.
Welcome to our new reality here with the Democrats in charge of the House and Trump, having a shutdown, which I just want to mention going in. He has said from the time he took office that he thinks shutdowns work for him, that he thinks it's a politically excellent sort of strategy for him. I think he thinks he's such a dominant, alpha male that he's just going to eventually wear down or roll over the opposition, and he will get what he wants. I think that's a fallacy. I also think it's just simply something that he believes because he really has no clue and no understanding of deal, right? I mean, whatever he thought was deal making never was, and certainly isn't in the context of, top, very high, stakes government negotiations. Anyway, I don't think Trump really wants
Now, to be fair about the negotiations, would you just add that his father is no longer with us, and so he can't come in and be the guarantor for any type of deal, which was the way that Donald Trump got his start. But go ahead.
Exactly. And then later he had some Russian helpers. They are around, but they can't really help him on this, right?
Gotta lay low right now. We'll talk about that more later in the program, but go ahead.
Right. Not a good time for them to really, kind of stick their heads up. But in any case, he doesn't understand this. And I think ultimately what Trump wants, I think it's a mistake to think he wants the wall. What he wants is to make sure that Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh aren't mad at him. Because before this, whole shutdown happened, Trump was giving every indication that he was willing to go along with Mitch McConnell's plan, which was to reopen the government, for a year, and to simply do a continuing resolution into February on the DHS budget, which is the source of this particular argument. He was willing to do that, and, he wanted to fight this out and whatever, and, but he wasn't really going to go to the mat. It was pretty clear that this was going to be something else that would probably be kicked down the road. Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter had a fit, and I'm using them as sort of symbols, but they were specifically did have a fit, but there were plenty of others in their corner. And he got scared, and he even called up Rush Limbaugh and said, "Hey, don't worry, I'm gonna do it." And he backed off. And this is the same thing that happened the last time they tried to do this deal. When he and Pelosi and Schumer got together, with Lindsey Graham and a whole bunch of Republicans, and they put together a deal at that time for $25 billion for the wall in exchange for the legalization of the DACA kids. And he backed off on that one as well when the right wing, I think in this case led by Stephen Miller and some of the Freedom Caucus guys in the House, came up to the White House and said, "What are you doing?" He backed off on that. So, it's not every indication is to me that the wall itself is something that's become a symbol to him, or as Lindsey Graham put it, is a metaphor for him, giving his
something.
followers what they demand. That he's there to deliver on this big campaign promise, which, by the way, we should mention, was revealed to have been sort of a what do they call it? I mean,
mnemonic
it was sort of
device.
It was. It was a mnemonic device put together by Sam Nunberg, that crazy guy, and the other crazy guy, Roger Stone, when Trump first started running, in order that he wouldn't forget to talk about immigration, which was a subject he really had very little association with up to that point. I mean, he always cared about foreigners, but it was a trade thing. It didn't have to do with this specific thing. But Sam Nunberg and Roger Stone knew that this was sort of, this was a hard right obsession, and they gave it to Trump to use, and of course he did to great effect. But the wall then became a big crowd pleaser, and he could say, hey, what about the wall? Yeah, and they'd scream, who's going to pay for it? Mexico. And that became a thing for him, not because of any real, genuine commitment. Well, look, we're talking about Trump. He doesn't understand anything. But it was never something that he specifically, had sort of studied up on or been convinced was a great way to deal with the immigration issue or anything. It was just the kind of a campaign slogan that they used. So here we are now with the government shutdown in what is about to become the longest government shutdown in American history. And things are really starting to fall apart. And Trump is now, I think that the speech he gave this week was less to try and convince his people. He told the reporters, he had some reporters up to the White House, I guess they were network anchors or whatever, to talk about it off the record. And apparently what he told them was that he didn't think this was really going to work either, and he thought visiting the border wall was kind of a stupid thing, but that his communications people had convinced him to do it. And I think he was actually convinced to do it because they've got wavering Republicans for the first time in his administration. Republicans are starting to go, whoa. And that's because this thing is dragging on so long with no real obvious way out.
We should be explicit about where that weakness is coming from in terms of the Republicans, right? Like, farmers are not getting loans. They're not going to be getting their payments from slush funds to make up for the tariffs. So you've got like Kansas and Iowa, people like Joni Ernst, and in Colorado, you got Cory Gardner. You got Susan Collins, of course, who doesn't want to be in this situation. Shelley Capito in West Virginia, because people are starting to look. It's starting to look at their food stamps is going to be a problem. All right, well, let's take a break because I want to add one more player into the mix whose name has not come up, really, but only in passing, and who to me seems to be the linchpin of this and has been virtually out of the news for the entire week, and that's Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell is a player in this, although he seems to his play seems to be duck and cover. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Digby. We're talking about the shutdown. And of course, we will necessarily have to talk about the question of immigration as well. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. We'll be right back.